Hey guys, sebchoof here. Today for you I have a Realm of the Mad God tier list where I'll be ranking 30 different bows, including all the relevant UT and ST bows, and I'll be talking about all the higher tier bows and longbows. This also includes the 3 new awakening enchants on the Bramble Bow, the Doom Bow, and the Leaf Bow. You won't believe how overpowered one of these are, and I'll show you the strategies on how to get these the easiest. I'll be of course ranking these bows on their power, but I also want to weigh them on their accessibility. There's not much point in just listing them based on their damage numbers. I really want this to be a guide for new players and later game players in deciding what bow they should farm for. So that's why I have the tiers set up like this. We have, at the bottom, the E tier, for absolute garbage. Even if you find these bows, you're best off not using them over what you most likely already have. Then, one up, the D tier, is for items that if you come across them it might be worth using depending on what you have, but definitely not worth farming. C is slightly better, where the items are decent, if not good, and only slightly worth the grind. B tier is for solid items that are only kinda worth farming. Then A tier is for great bows that are worth the farm. And lastly, the coveted S tier, for items that are extremely worth going out of your way for. Overpowered shit. For how easy they are to acquire at least. Let's get into it. So, for bows, there's 2 different groups of them. There's the shotgun bows, those that fire a spread of shots. Usually it's harder to hit all the shots, but if you do, it deals more damage and are nicer for clearing smaller mobs. And then there's sniper bows, that shoot a concentrated shot or stream of damage. Easier to use at range, and on paper do less damage, but could do more in practice, thanks to their reach. Let's first discuss the shotgun bows, which shoot a spread of shots instead of a straight line. These in general feel great for clearing lesser enemies, because of the spread out shots, and since lesser enemies usually have less defense. These generally don't do better against more endgame stuff since each shot gets reduced by the enemy defense, unless it armor pierces of course. The projectiles of these often have long range, but to hit all shots it usually requires you to be basically kissing the enemy, super close. At least the payoff is usually great. When hitting all the shots from these bows, on average they do the most damage. Let's start with the most well-known bows, the tiered bows. There's 14 different tiers, not including the overpowered tier 0 bow you start with, and they all have the same projectile behavior. The shots have a max range of 7, but if you want to hit all 3 shots, you need to be within a 4 tile range of the enemy, almost like a damn sword. But if you do this, you'll deal way more damage. The middle shot roughly deals 2/3 of the bow's damage, with the side shots dealing a 1/6 of the bow's damage each. But they do armor pierce as well. The bows rise evenly in damage, just decreasing per tier, starting at increasing by 15% per tier, and ending between the tier 13 and tier 14 with a 5% damage increase, with a power spike at tier 8, tier 10, and tier 13. Ever since the tiered bow rework, they feel like a strong option, and in this tier list I'll be including the tier 11, tier 12, tier 13, and tier 14 bows, to lay our foundation to compare the other special bows to. Firstly, with the tier 11 bow, it's nothing special, but it's really accessible. It drops from almost every dungeon and event boss in the adept biomes. You're almost definitely going to get it early on in all of your runs, and it's as good if not better than a lot of the rarer stuff that drops in the same areas. I have to put this at least in the low A tier. Next up is the tier 12 bow, which is a slight damage increase, nothing major, but it's considerably rarer. It drops from the events in the veteran biome and only the harder dungeons from the same area. Much less chance of seeing this bow compared to the tier 11, and it's not as good as some of the ST and UT bows in the same area. It's also only 5% DPS roughly higher than the tier 11 bow. I have to put this in the middle of B tier. As you probably expected, next is the tier 13 bow, which actually has a decent power spike over just the gradual bumps that the tiered bows usually have. This is because of a jump in damage on the side shots, on top of the gradual increase in the middle shot damage. Instead of the usual 5% damage increase the tiered bows usually have around this tier, you have a 15% damage increase at 0 defense, and then it only gets better with higher defense because of the bump in the piercing shots damage. Even though this bow is another step rarer, dropping from mostly only Exalt dungeons, it's really great for its accessibility since, as you'll see, it overpowers most other bows in the same area. It does however start needing purple dust to roll, which is the rarest and most cringe. Because of its strength, I do really feel like it should go at least in the middle of A tier. And lastly, for the tiered bows, we have the tier 14 bow. Now this is only a roughly 5% damage increase over the tier 13 bow, but it's a billion times rarer. general. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but the first place it drops is from Umi. And I do so many Umis, and I don't remember the last time I've got any tier 14 weapon, let alone the bow. And funny thing is that Umi drops a generally better bow more often. We'll talk about that one later. The only other boss that drops this is Oryx 3, which you should be running anyway, but yeah, the chance of getting a tier 14 bow, or a specific tier 14 weapon that you want, is quite slim. Sure, this is one of the best bows in the game, but it still gets beaten by some bows that are easier to obtain. Plus, at this point in the game, you won't need a clearing bow for lesser enemies as much, because even getting within the 4-tile range of the small enemies at this level of content can be suspicious at best at times. Because of this, I have to put it in the low B tier. Okay, we're jumping back to the beginning of this one, the Bramble Bow. What a disappointment, man. Even as an early game weapon, it does not compare to the likes of the Spider Fang Dagger and the Crystal Serpent Staff. It does the best at low defense, being as good as between a tier 7 and a tier 8 bow, but it falls off hardcore as the enemy defense increases, because of the bow's lack of piercing. At 15 defense, it's equal to between a tier 5 and a tier 6 bow, and at 50 defense, it is worse damage than a tier 4 bow. Isn't that gross? And this isn't even taking into account the bow's disgusting spread, where you need to be at least 2 times as close to your enemy to hit all shots compared to tiered bows. Putting this at the bottom of the D tier because it's garbage, but at least if you hit all the shots on early game bosses, you will destroy them, and you'll find a better bow quickly. It's also not the worst at dispatching the most weakest of enemies, I guess. Now, for something new and that looks really cool. The new Bramble Bow Awakening is called the Fawn Swarm. This is an extremely rare enchant that you can get on a Bramble Bow, either by picking it up or by rolling into it. This makes the bow shoot way more shots, and it gets rid of one of the original Bramble Bow weaknesses, which is the poor scaling against enemy defense. This is because this awakening makes all of the shots armor pierce. Crazy thing is, this makes this bow that drops from the second easiest dungeon in the game slightly better than a tier 12 bow at 0 defense, and almost as good as a tier 13 bow at 50 defense. Though it doubles down on one of the Bramble Bow's original problems, which is the shot width, making it almost twice as hard to hit all the shots. Also, the awakening is damn rare. You have a roughly 0.4% chance of it appearing on a slot when you get it, or when you reroll, and you would have to be an absolute dummy like me to use your green dust on this bow. If you for some reason did a forest maze and hit the jackpot and got a Bramble Bow with this enchantment on it, then knock yourself out and meme with it for a while, but it should quickly get replaced by another bow that you find. And since it's much harder to get, I'd say it's lower in D tier than its original. Okay, we're still in despair with the next one. We're going into the machine dungeon and grabbing the bottle bow. Now, this bow, just like the other machine items, is quite a meme. Sure, if you hit all the shots on a 0 defense target, this bow actually outdamages the tier 12 bow, but it quickly loses damage against enemy defense since it's shooting 5 different shots. Also, the spread is pure garbage. You have to be basically standing on the enemies, giving them a lap dance, to hit all your shots. And hitting any less than 5 shots is just not worth it. The range of the item is pretty cool, and it could be nice for clearing very pathetic enemies. And ironically, this can be quite good against Oryx 3 and Moonlight Village when you can stand on the boss, but you can easily find a bow that is better. In the E tier you go. Guys, this is a great checkpoint to ask, to like the video and subscribe if you care about me. Also, I have to tell you about this life-changing new sponsor that you won't believe. It's me! Guys, making ROM content is not easy. Videos take a lot of time, or I pay editors hundreds of dollars per video, and I would be flipping burgers and have way much less time, if that was English, to make videos if it wasn't for you guys. I recently revamped my Patreon, so if you're interested in supporting me to help me create more videos, check out the benefits you can get for each tier. You can get things like one-on-one chills, shoutouts at the very beginning of every video or halfway through, early access to videos and behind the scenes stuff, and much more. Just check out the link in the description. Thank you if you choose to support me, and even if you're just watching, I love you and appreciate you big time. Very similarly, we have the Baked Bow. This is super similar, with the only difference of it being all the shots are armor piercing, but that still doesn't save it. In the E tier with your bow you go. Finally, we're getting out of a streak of garbage with this one, the Coral Bow. Honestly, this bow is quite underrated. The bow drops from the Ocean Trench at a rare rate alongside the other nice Huntress items. The damage against 0 defense targets is almost as good as a tier 13 bow, but slightly worse than a tier 11 bow at 50 defense. However, with a true range of 6.3 tiles, which is more than 50% range than tiered bows, it's so much more widely usable, making the practical damage way higher. So it could actually practically be better than a tier 14 bow at 0 defense, in action. And at higher defense levels, it has to be better than a tier 11 bow, since you have to hit the side shots to make the tier 11 count, because of the armor piercing shots. Me personally, I can kiss most enemies in the game and get away with it, and hit all the shots with any bow, almost, but I want this to be more accessible to everyone, even newbies. And if you're a newbie, this bow is for you, since you don't have to be balls deep to deal total damage. This bow is still amazing for what everyone used to use it for during the Wild Shadow days, which is clearing little shits. It can be hard to force farm this bow for newer players because the dungeon Ocean Trench mostly drops from the very northern biome. However, the dungeon is a guaranteed drop from the Hermit God, which does spawn in the Coral Reef biome, and the Hermit has a chance of spawning when you kill set pieces there. Especially if you're a Huntress, this dungeon is worth doing because it also drops a trap, and archers also get to enjoy the level, which is on par with a tier 13. I'd put this at least at the top of B tier, higher if you're a Huntress, lower if you're a Bard, since he can't wear the level. Poor guy. Now for a bit of a wild one, the Predator bow. This bow shoots 5 shots in total, but 3 of these go forwards and 2 of these are back shots. And you know what, even though this bow is quite early game accessible, it's actually the highest damage bow in the entire game, at lower defense levels at least, only getting beaten by Umi bow at higher defense. But the catch is that you have to hit all 5 shots, requiring you to literally stand on enemies, which is almost always impossible. It can be an amazing weapon against Moon Knight Village bosses and Oryx 3, since they often allow you to give them a kiss and always have 0 defense when they allow you to do so. But even if you're only hitting the 3 shots at the front, it does pretty nice damage. Just hitting these 3 shots makes it deal a whopping roughly 4,000 damage, which is better than the tier 14 bow at 0 defense. Like what? It does drop to a roughly tier 12.5 equivalent bow at 50 defense though, due to its lack of piercing, but man, it is nice. The shot spread is a bit cringe, but nothing like the other bows we've talked about so far. You need to be within 2 tiles to hit all 3 shots, and 4 tiles to hit 2 shots, which is only as good as a tier 9 bow at that point. I'm sure the bow would get extra points as well from newer players for destroying enemies trying to give them unwanted back shots. But yeah, this bow is surprisingly easy to get. You need to get 25 of these shards to have a 1 in 6 chance of getting the bow, or 50 if you want to get it guaranteed from the Tinkerer. You can get these shards in a couple of different ways. First way is getting them from buried treasures, from completing this mission. It sometimes changes, but right now all you need to do is enter Oryx Castle twice every 16 hours. The buried treasure gives you a chance of getting 5 of these tokens. Second way you can get them is usually through the battle pass. In the current one that exists during the recording of this video, you can get a full stack. And then the third most consistent way is from chest events. Check out which easy dungeon has a chest event by using the in-game calendar, and that's a way that you can farm it consistently. Because of the power of this bow for new players, for its accessibility, and for its power in the end game, this has to be our first S tier bow. Next, the newest bow in the game, the Spider Silk bow. This bow, as you can probably guess, now drops from the Crawling Depths. It shoots very similar to tiered bows, with the same width, with 3 shots, except the middle shot is a burst. The unique difference of this bow is that all of its damage armor pierces. People have been dismissing this bow as absolute garbage, and you know what, that might actually be true. At 0 defense, this bow's damage is almost equal to a tier 12, and from Crawling Depths you'll probably commonly come across a tier 11 bow. But 0 defense is not where this bow was designed to be used for. At 50 defense it's equal to more like a tier 12.5 bow, which probably isn't good enough. Not worth your time. It's rarely worth using it if you somehow got it, it's painfully average at best, but at least it's the first item to get into the C tier, right? Up next, we have the Hailstorm bow, which drops from the purple dragon from the Lair of Draconis. This bow is actually really similar to the Spider Silk bow because all of its shots armor pierce. But let's not waste any time with this one, because this one deals only 6% more damage, but you have to be 2 times as close to hit all of the shots. The set piece bonuses don't even save this item. How could you be worse than the Spider Silk bow? Stop wasting my time, bottom of the C tier you go. Okay, now time for a crazier one, the BOW. This is another bow that everyone dismisses as being absolute garbage, but is that really the case? With all 5 shots at 0 defense, this bow actually does 15% more damage than a tier 14 bow. It does decrease quickly with enemy defense though. At 15 defense, it's only about 8% more damage than the tier 14 bow, which is still amazing for a bow that drops from a dungeon that's easier than the Exalt ones. And it does drop to roughly a tier 12.5 equivalent bow in terms of damage at 50 defense. The main issue of this bow is that you have to hit all the shots to deal full damage, which requires you to be in a 1.5 tile range of the enemy. But even if you're only hitting 3 of these shots, which requires a 3.5 tile range, which is almost the same range as a tiered bow, it still does equivalent to tier 12 damage, which is kinda mid. Another interesting thing about the bow is its range though. It's the longest tile range bow in the entire game, with its shots hitting up to 12 tiles. On Bard, this goes insane. You can't even see the range that it goes to if you use the Inspire ability. It's also really great for lower defense enemies when you can get up close to them enough. Though another issue is that HTT is very cringe to farm. The dungeon is way too long, and it can really smack your behind when you least expect it. Also, burst fire weapons don't increase in damage after 75 dexterity. Honestly, I'm feeling a top of B tier with this one. Second last one of the shotgun bows, but definitely not the second least, is the bolt thrower. This item's a bit cringe to obtain. You have to first get 2 of these resurrected Huntress tokens from the beekeeper in the nest, so we're finally in Exalt dungeon tier difficulty. But yeah, you have to go out of your way in a nest to get this secret boss, which is a bit annoying, and these ST tokens are kind of rare. On top of that, you do need to use 900 forge fire and 120 ST materials in the forge, on top of the tokens. Now, is all of this worth it? Hell yeah it is! This is the second highest damaging bow under the Predator bow, only dealing roughly 10% less damage, and you don't actually have to be directly on the enemies. You do still need to be roughly 1 tile away at max, but since you don't have to be giving the enemies a lap dance, it does open up to more opportunities that it's usable, and it's a lot safer in general. Another plus of this is that the shots aren't evenly spread. The 2 shots on the sides are decently spread out from the others, so it makes it easier to hit the middle 3, which only requires you to be within a 2.5 tile range. Then you're dealing still roughly 15% more damage than the tier 14 bow, which is pretty damn good. You really need to go balls deep with this one, but it does pay off hardcore. This bow, in my opinion, at least sneaks into the low S tier. Now, to end the shotgun bow section beautifully, we have the amazing, sexy Warmonger. Since when did this item get so awesome? It used to be so bad, but now it's like a Seabow on steroids. Just like the Seabow, it has these 2 shots with extremely fast projectile speeds, so it feels really good to use. It's also got really good true range, almost 2 tiles longer than Seabow. And the damage on this? It's just illegal, man. It deals almost 10% more damage than tier 14 bow, and it's much easier to hit in practice. Because of that, it would absolutely smoke the tier 14. At 50 defense, it does drop slightly under the tier 13 bow in terms of damage, since it doesn't have any piercing shots, but in practice it's probably much better. Warmonger's damage can still decrease though. If you're in combat, you lose 5 dex, which roughly translate to 7% less damage. But come on man, just dodge all the shots. This bow also gives 5 vit! Vit bow, but there's also one more downside of this bow. It drops from the very last boss of Shadows, so you need to get through this painfully long dungeon, only for the slight chance of getting it. Or you can just get it from a Shadows quest chest. It's not hard, man. I still think this is easier to get than the tier 14 bow, which is funny, but Shadows, just like Oryx 3, is a toughie. Despite the difficulty though, the upside is crazy, and I think it's well deserving of the highest place in S tier. Guys, after making the bow tier list, I didn't realize that it would be over 40 minutes long in total, so I decided to split it up in 2 different parts. If you want to catch the next part, which will include all the sniper bows, like Umi bow for example, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Catch you next time. Peace.